Hello, everyone. It's Matt Murray here with the Wonders of Wildlife National Museum and Aquarium. Thank you for joining us today as we begin our new theme for the month of July, forests. Along with the live stream we do each week, we also offer a really cool virtual scavenger hunt app you can play right at home and an activity guide, both with new missions and activities each month. To download the app and explore all of this, go to www.wondersofwildlife.org/mission-conservation. This address takes you to our Mission Conservation webpage. On this page, I'll bring you over to the box that says, Get the app. Click the download button and follow the instructions. Once you have the app downloaded, create a user account and log in. Hit the search bar and type in Mission Conservation. This is where all of our at-home missions will pop up for you to play. If you look a little further down, you'll see featured missions. Featured missions are the most current missions we have to offer. The last place that I'll bring your attention to on this page is Schedule of Missions and Activities. This section will show you all of the missions that are live, including our current mission, Forests. If you click on the plus sign, it will drop the tab down and you can find the link to the activity guide for this month. The activity guide has a craft, a fun outdoor activity, and something that you can do to help out with forests. So I'm standing here in our wildlife galleries in front of our Olympic National Park exhibit. Olympic National Park offers one of the largest or the largest temperate rainforest in the United States, lower 48. So here to talk to us about forests today is Ashley Johnson. Ashley is a lead educator at Dogwood Canyon Nature Park. How are you doing today, Ashley?
Doing pretty good, thank you.
What do you have to talk to us about?
Today we're going to learn all about trees and how to identify them.
Well, that sounds exciting. Let's jump right in.
Alrighty, well, as I said, my name is Ashley. I'm really excited to be here with you guys today, and we're going to be talking all about tree ID. So trees are a very important factor in making up forests, and forests are very crucial to our environment because not only can they help stabilize our climate and regulate the water cycle, but they also provide lots of food and habitat for wildlife, such as here with me today. I have a bird's nest that was in a dogwood tree. Okay, so trees are going to be very important for wildlife's day-to-day activities. And of course, they also provide oxygen for us. So here at Dogwood, we have lots of different trees. So let's dive on into how to identify them. And we're going to start with the two main categories of trees. So you have your deciduous trees and you have your conifer trees. Okay, so let's start with the deciduous trees. So this is going to be from a maple tree. Maple trees are in the deciduous trees. Deciduous trees are going to have broad leaves, such as this, the leaves that do sometimes turn pretty colors in the fall and then fall off. So these are going to be the trees that are not going to have leaves usually in the winter time. They also use flowers to produce their seeds. So other examples of trees in this category could be oaks, walnuts, hickories, and even dogwoods. And of course, there's lots of others. Next would be the conifers. So conifer trees are going to be trees with needle-like leaves. They're not going to have broad leaves, and they're going to produce their seed via cones like this. So think of a pine cone. Okay, so examples of these trees are going to be pines, cedars, and redwoods. Also, these trees are going to be what we call evergreen. Evergreen means that since they don't drop their leaves in the winter time, like deciduous trees, they tend to be the only green trees that you can typically see in the woods during the winter. So with us today, we've got Blake at the mill. He is the manager over at the mill here at Dogwood, and he's going to talk to us about the only conifer here at Dogwood that is also deciduous.
Hi guys, I'm Blake. I'm one of the managers here at Dogwood, and today we've been discussing the classification of trees. Now, we typically break trees into two main groups. The deciduous, those trees that drop their leaves every fall and grow new ones in the spring, and the evergreens, those trees that bear some foliage year-round and dropping intermittently. Now, when we look at these two groups, general rule of thumb is that if it has a big giant leaf, it's typically going to be deciduous. If it has a small needle or scale-like leaf, like we associate with the conifers, it's typically going to be evergreen. But that's not always the case. Here's the bald cypress, Taxodium distichum, Missouri's only deciduous conifer. It's a cone-bearing plant with these needle-like leaves, but it will drop these every fall and grow brand new needles in the spring. So it kind of breaks that rule. It really likes swampy type environments. As you can see, we have a lot of water standing here. We have a few places at Dogwood where this happens, and the cypresses thrive in this environment. You'll see these a lot in Missouri's Boot Heel, where we have those moist plains. It's able to handle the moisture very well. It doesn't get oxygen deprived like most plants would. We believe maybe because of the knees. The part of the root system that grows above the grade keeps oxygen flowing through the plant. There are several other different species of plants and trees that you may see breaking that deciduous evergreen rule. For instance, the southern magnolia. The southern magnolia has a big broad leaf, but it will keep it year-round. And so evergreen or deciduous, how can you tell? What's the final way? The only tried and true method to know which one's which? Well, you might just have to stay year-round.
Alrighty, so now that we've learned about the two main groups of trees, let's jump on into leaf characteristics and learn about them and how they can help us with our tree ID. So leaves are very, very unique, or at least they can be, and sometimes looking at the leaf is all you need to identify a tree. So first, we're going to look at the two different kinds of broad leaf shapes and characteristics. So right here, we have what we call a simple leaf. A simple leaf just means that it is just one big solid leaf, super straightforward. This is going to be from a pawpaw tree. Cool fact about pawpaws is they are actually one of the favorite host plants to the zebra swallowtail. We have zebra swallowtail here at Dogwood Canyon. They are sometimes very, very abundant, more than other butterflies during the spring and summer months. So like I said, pawpaw is going to be a simple leaf, just means that it's going to be one solid shape. And then we have our compound leaf. A compound leaf is going to be basically broken up into little sections. So this is going to be from a walnut tree. So this entire shape is going to be considered the leaf, and it has got a bunch of little leaflets that attach to one main stem, which we call a petiole. However, this is still one big leaf with a bunch of different parts, okay? So we have our compound leaf and we have our simple leaf, okay? Next, we can look at the leaf margin. So leaf margin is just talking about the edge of the leaf. So I'm gonna bring up that pawpaw again, okay? So with a pawpaw leaf, the edges of the leaf are going to be very smooth. There's not going to be any teeth, any lobes. It's just going to be one straight line. Whereas this leaf, which came from an elm tree, has teeth, or what we call serration. So it's very bumpy on the outside. So elm leaves are going to be like this. They also have another really cool characteristic to them, is if you look right here, so this side of the leaf comes in a lot higher up than the outside of the other side, so it's asymmetrical. And also, if you were to feel it, it's pretty rough, okay? And that's gonna let you know that this particular elm leaf came from a slippery elm, okay? And also has the serration on the side. Another leaf margin is going to be a lobed leaf margin, which means that it has indents, areas that come in to the leaf and make these larger sections here on the side. So this came from a tulip poplar. These are pretty unique leaves. You should know that it's a poplar just by the leaf and looking at it. Another tree that you can identify usually just based off of the leaf is going to be the sassafras. So this is a three-lobed leaf, as you can see. It also kind of looks a little bit like a duck foot. So super easy. And also, if you were to walk through the woods and you were to see this and you were to break off the leaf or break off a twig, you can smell it. It smells a little bit like Fruit Loops. Okay. All right, so finally we can talk about the actual shape of the leaf. So leaves can come in a lot of different shapes. So elms, these guys are elliptical or basically an oval shape, okay? And then you could have a lanceolate shape, which is long and skinny, but you can also have what we call a cordate shape, which means it looks a lot like a heart. So this is going to be from a redbud tree. Okay, redbuds, you've probably seen them before. They're going to be shorter, understory trees that in the springtime, they're the ones that produce that really pretty purple flower. Okay, and they have cordate or heart-shaped leaves. Okay. So now that we feel pretty comfortable with our leaf characteristics, let's just dive on into learning how to identify a tree and all that goes into it. So when you're identifying a tree, you really want to take all factors into consideration, okay? And you basically use all of those pieces to give you one final answer. So let's start with bark. So bark can be pretty simple, nothing really unique, but sometimes it can be very unique. So I have with me a section taken from a dogwood tree. Okay, we have lots of dogwood trees here at Dogwood Canyon. And this tree has a lot of little squares or rectangles in its bark that if you look at it, looks a little bit like alligator skin. Take into consideration that these are going to be understory trees. You can pretty much come to the conclusion that it's a dogwood tree pretty quickly, okay? Now, okay, let's jump back into leaves for another moment. You can also look at how the tree or how the leaves are positioned on the tree, and you can help. That can help in your tree ID. So trees have two types of arrangement that we're going to talk about. You can have alternate arrangement and you can have opposite arrangement. So what arrangement means is how the leaf comes out of the twig or the branch. So let's bring up our maple. So this is going to be an oppositely arranged tree, or leaves. So if you look, the stems of these leaves come out opposite one another on this twig here, kind of creates like a mirrored image, okay? Whereas with our elm, so we've got a branch from an elm here, the leaves come off almost at a diagonal from each other. They do not create a mirrored image. There are not a whole bunch of oppositely arranged trees here in Missouri, and we've got a little acronym that we use to help us remember. It's called MAD Buck, M-A-D, so maple, ash, dogwood, and buckeye. And that is a good indicator that if the tree falls in one of the, in that category, it's a maple, ash, dogwood, or a buckeye tree, you have opposite arrangement, and you can use that to help you identify it. And if it doesn't have opposite arrangement, then it's going to be something not in that category, okay? All right, so now we also want to look at the overall shape of the tree. So is it going to be a tall, dominant tree that's going to hang out at the top of the canopy? Or is it going to be a small understory tree that has maybe like a twisted trunk or maybe like a zigzag pattern going to it as it grows? That's all going to be a very important indication on what kind of tree it's going to be. Finally, you also want to look at location. Okay, location is going to be very important. Not all trees are going to grow in the same area. So for example, let's talk about willows and sycamores. So those trees like areas with lots of water, floodplains, that kind of thing. You're not going to expect to find them at maybe the top of a hillside where there's lots of sunshine and lots of rocks, okay? So why is tree ID important? Well, trees can produce a lot of different products for us. Not all of them are going to be the same, so you want to be able to know what kind of trees you're planting or the specific product that you're trying to get. So like I said, trees are a very important natural resource that we've been utilizing for a long time. So products that, there's a lot of products that we use from them. They can be as simple as paper products that we're very used to being familiar with, food, oxygen, lumber. You can also have some less obvious products like chocolate, latex gloves, and even chewing gum. Okay, so here at Dogwood, this area has a history of logging for timber dating back to about 100 years ago. So here's Michaela, an educator here at Dogwood Canyon, to talk to you guys about the history of logging in this area, as well as the oldest recorded tree here in the park.
Hi guys, my name is Michaela and I'm an educator here at Dogwood Canyon, and I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the oldest trees we have here in the park and why they are the oldest. So as you can see, there's lots of trees around us here, but about 100 years ago this area might have looked quite a bit different due to the major logging waves. So here in the Ozarks we had two large logging waves. One was in the late 1800s. They came through and harvested lots of softwood trees, so things like pines. And they utilized those for housing. And then in the early 1900s, that second wave came through and they harvested the hardwood trees, so things like walnuts, oaks, hickories, and they utilized those for things like railroad ties. There is one type of tree that they left alone, and that is the sycamore. So the sycamore trees were never deemed as valuable. There was twisting in their grain as they grow. So what that means is they could never cut straight boards or really utilize that wood for much of anything. So they were kind of left alone during those logging waves. Right now, I am standing next to the oldest confirmed tree here in the park. This tree is aged at 280 years old. We know this because in 2004, this tree took on some serious damage in a high windstorm. And in order to preserve as much of the tree as they could, they cut the tree's trunk at an angle. That was to preserve the healthy part of the tree and prevent rotting in the damaged part of the tree. Now, when they cut the tree, we were able to analyze the growth rings. So the growth rings are something in the trunk of the tree that signify their annual growth. And when you count those, you can kind of see how old that tree is. You get a good estimate of its age. In 2004, this was counted at 270 years. So now it's a little over 280. There may be some older trees here in the park, but we haven't had the chance to analyze those because they're still alive and healthy.
Alrighty, so now that we've gone really in depth on tree ID and we've learned a lot about it, let's talk about what trees you would want to plant in your yard. So when looking at different species, I would encourage you to only plant native trees. Native trees are always going to be best for the local ecosystems. If you can, avoid planting non-native and invasive species. So one invasive and non-native species that has been planted a whole bunch is going to be the Bradford pear tree. The Bradford pear gained its popularity because of its ability to grow really fast and also its ability to live in basically any type of soil that you have. Okay, now that does have its downside. So these trees are known for breaking very, very easily. If you have one, you've probably had a couple limbs fall in your yard, and they also tend to die young. Now, the bad effects that they have on the local ecosystem is that since they can spread so easily, they tend to crowd out local trees, okay, because they have escaped into the wild, and they also will shade the forest floor so much so that not a whole bunch can grow underneath of them, which reduces your plant diversity, and it also reduces your animal diversity, okay? So the best way to ID these trees are in the springtime. They are going to be the pretty white trees that you see in people's yards and along the highway. So these are going to be shorter trees with a pretty straight trunk and a full canopy. So when they're out in the open, they will tend to have an oval shaped canopy, okay? And then of course they have these really bright white leaves or flowers, and they are going to be one of the first to bloom. So they will bloom in early spring. But there's another native tree that will also bloom in early spring, and it's called the serviceberry. So the serviceberry is not going to have the same growth patterns. Remember, we wanted to talk about overall shape and when it comes to identifying trees. So serviceberries are going to be understory trees. They grow kind of at a zigzag or at an angle, and they have a very, very small crown or canopy, less than half the size of the Bradford pear. Now, another tree that's going to look similar is going to be the dogwood tree. So we have lots of dogwoods here. These guys are going to also produce white flowers, but they're going to produce them a little bit later in springtime, about the end of April. They're also going to be short understory trees that kind of grow in funny patterns. Also, their crown is going to be an interesting shape. It's pretty much going to be flat. Okay, as you're driving along the highway and you look through the tree line, you're going to see what looks like flat white pancakes as you are driving down the road, and that's going to be a dogwood tree. Now, if it is not springtime and you just have leaves to look at, I do have some examples here. So this is going to be from a dogwood. Okay, now remember we talked about mad buck, maple ash dogwood. So dogwoods do have opposite arrangement. You can see right here. Okay, so that's something the Bradford pear is not going to have. Okay, now these guys also, when they're growing, their branches tend to turn up. Okay, let me try to turn that a little bit. They turn up almost like a hand sitting there like this, okay? And they're also a lighter color green, and that's important because the Bradford pear usually has some pretty dark colored leaves, and whenever it's a mature leaf, the top is going to be a really dark green color. It's going to be waxy, and then when you flip it over, it's going to be a lot lighter, okay? And again, these guys are also alternately arranged leaves, so they're not going to be opposites, okay? So keep that in mind whenever you are trying to plant trees in your yard. That's going to do it for today. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you learned a lot about tree ID. Just remember, when planting trees in your yard, native is always best. Do your part in protecting your local ecosystems. Oh, he's muted. I think you're muted, Matt.
Oh, looks like we have some technical difficulties there. All right, well, thank you, Ashley, for talking to us today about forests and taking the time to talk to us about how to identify trees and what we can do to plant trees and which trees are invasive and which trees are not good to be planted. So join us next week as we continue our theme for the month of July, forest. But I would like to leave you with this question before we go. So think about what you can do in your neighborhood or maybe your backyard locally that you can help out with trees or other forests or woods. Because as was mentioned, trees and forests are very essential to our health and producing oxygen for us. So tune in next week as we continue our live stream and our theme for the month of July in forests. And remember, we all live downstream.